At Noah Webster Educational Foundation, we focus on five, what we kind of call our big stones in education. The roles of instruction, the roles of parents, government, faith and morality, and facilities. So let's kind of, based on those things, let's talk about a few other things that kind of zero down and get into a little more. Earlier on, you were talking about your system generally having very large class sizes. So talk to me a little bit about class size and the influence of facilities on instruction.
Sure. So Prince William County is one of the fastest growing counties in Virginia. With the new census data, we gained 80,000 people over the last 10 years. So there's a constant kind of catch up of having the space for all of our students, right? We also have buildings that were built in 1970s that we're still using. And we have a renovation schedule to basically be able to get 80 years out of a building before we finally have to replace it. But that means that as you're building brand new buildings, and usually the brand new schools go where the brand new developments are, right? Mm-hmm. So it creates an added disparity of older schools and older communities, newer schools and newer communities, which plays into sometimes wealth and racial disparities, which create challenges. Yeah. So one of the things that we did was create a commission that went through all of our buildings and looked at every grade level and what we could do to upgrade some of our older schools to just help modernize, make sure that they're all at the same base standard as some of our newer schools. And it was that infrastructure task force committee was very helpful in just kind of laying out a roadmap to, hopefully reducing some of the inequities. But, when you've got students who are in classrooms with, smart boards, large windows with lots of light, newer furniture, they all talk to their friends, especially at the high school level. And, they see the differences when they go for different sporting events of, how things look. And so there's a lot of buzz around, the word equity and everything these days. But part of the job of a school division is to make sure that everybody has the same level of base support, whether it's buildings and infrastructure, whether it's IT, whether it's academic, that every student is going to have at minimum, X, right? So that you're giving people the same opportunities for down the road. And so that becomes very important. And we ended up cutting a lot of trailers. We had elementary schools with double-digit number of trailers. Wow. Right? That's how overcrowded some of our schools are. Now we also build some of the largest schools in the state. Our new elementary schools are built for about 900 students, which may be almost as large as some school divisions. Mm-hmm. We have our high schools on average are being built for 2,000 to 2,500 students. So it's very large scale when you're dealing with, getting close to 100,000 kids. We had a huge kind of financial fight over adding 500 more seats to our newest high school that's getting ready to open this fall. And one of our school board members pushed back on staff on how do we get more seats in and how do we do it without wasting a ton of money. And basically, the easiest way was to just build up. And so we added a third floor that you already have most of the steel infrastructure in place for it. You've got all the foundational work. you're just doing another level. And so we added on a third floor to a good chunk of the high school, created enough space for 500 extra students, minimized some of kind of the architectural frills. And, it's going to be a very nice new high school, but it's also going to be one of the largest in Northern Virginia and be able to really help us with a lot of our overcrowding. And we talked to staff about, so can we go to 3,000 or 4,000 for high school? Because, part of the issue is just getting the land. For high school, we need 80 acres, and you start running out of those. But you end up having to have essentially 2 high schools inside one building. It's all a balance of making sure kids aren't lost in the shuffle with making sure that you can create the space for students.
Let's shift gears here just a little bit. And what's the usefulness of external audits in the education system?
They're wonderful. One of the best things we did was the first year we were on the board, we had an external audit done on our special education system. And what we did, what we're doing for special needs students. The administration very quickly started cleaning up things that we all knew were a problem in advance of the audit. Shocker. There were particular people in particular programs that we all knew were a problem, and they suddenly got fixed. But so they did a little bit of advanced cleanup work, and then we also, they came in as external experts and could then give us a roadmap for how do we go about improving. And you hire an independent external auditor, they're not there to BS. They're going to come in, they're going to tell you what they see. We really wanted to do an external audit of our finance. Stafford did it when they changed over finance directors and found a lot of interesting things in terms of how the books were run. And we would have loved to have gotten there. But it lets you know, sometimes it validates what you're doing in some aspects, and sometimes it tells you, hey, here's where you're missing the boat, and here's where you can improve. They're wonderful. The administration tends to hate them, but they're wonderful.
Okay, excellent. So how can school boards serve taxpayers and ensure that budgets are used effectively?
Yeah, so a few things. You've got to watch the budget through the year. So you pass your original budget, and usually there is a level of attention there. But you always have adjustments to the budget throughout the year. And in Prince William, we do a quarterly budget update. Usually by the third quarter, the administration's pushing through whatever changes they want with whatever overages that we ended up having. So you've got to watch this. Secondly, one of the things we had was a community budget working group. And Prince William County has a lot of very smart people who work in the federal government, people who are professional auditors. And we had a group of 6-8 people who met throughout budget season over the course of a number of years. There were people on there who ended up probably knowing the school division's budget better than some of the finance team in the school division. And so we could come up with real proposals of here's how we need the money changed around. And that takes a lot of work, but the more oversight and transparency, the better. The other thing is just having more budget work sessions. The school administration wants to give you as few as possible.
Yeah.
And then still turn around and claim, oh, it's the school board's budget after the school board barely had the time to do anything. You're going to have a budget work session where everything's presented to you, and you probably go through, every department head tells you, here's what we want, here's what we're doing, that type of thing. But you need at least 2 more times for some level of markup, right? Because sometimes that first meeting just gets the juices flowing. And you've got to be able to have the ability to throw ideas out and then the ability for the public to hear about them. Maybe some things are really important. Maybe you can circle back to some things. But more budget meetings are better than fewer, because whatever level of sunshine and transparency you can bring will.
Great. So I got a couple more questions for you. How has your work in public relations influenced your time on the school board?
Sure. I've got probably about 9 years background in communication at this point, and I was able to help engage the community on what was going on in the school board, mostly through Facebook, but you mix in that and different editorials. We do have different joint editorials in the local papers on what was going on. Just start towards the tail end, we would start doing Facebook Live updates, and just sometimes it's easier just to talk straight to people than to write out a long post. But learning just how do you present information in digestible formats so that the public knows what's happening, right? If you've got a 15-slide PowerPoint, what are the 2 slides that actually matter?
Yeah.
Right. And how do you get it out to the public and let them know? And, I'd have Facebook posts that would reach, 10, 15,000 people. Because people would get talking and sharing. And so the more sunshine and transparency we could get on things, the better.
That's good. So on your Twitter page, I see you're a big sports fan. What place do you think organized sports has in public education? What are the primary values that it brings to students and communities?
Sure. I mean, sports is going to teach, hopefully, competition, discipline, drive. And there's a lot of good overlap between sports and people just learning how to be better human beings down the road. Part of the challenge for schools is how much money do you throw into them? And also, how do you make them accessible so it's not just all of the top tier students that are able to get in, but everybody has some level of teams that they're able to be part of. So it's a balance. But most communities have some sport that they're in love with and love watching on Friday nights. So different communities have different priorities.
Yeah. Okay. Final question. What would you like to leave with listeners that might help be a part of the solution education today?
Sure. Like we said earlier, well over half of your tax dollars are going to the school system. So it's on the community to be engaged, know what's going on. School board elections usually fall at the very bottom of a ballot, and people tend to overlook them. So pay attention, be engaged, ask candidates about the issues that you care about, and go share with your friends. Let your friends know that, just because you don't have kids in the system, it still impacts your community, your quality of life, your home values. So be engaged, pay attention. And honestly, it's one of the easiest levels of government to go make an impact on. It's very small. It's very local. You can easily go meet a school board member at Panera's or Starbucks, and go sit down and have a conversation. So if you want to actually make a difference, right, you can sit down, you can watch Fox News, you can yell at the TV, or you can engage in local government. And whether it's your board of supervisors, whether it's your school board, they're making decisions that impact you on a very direct basis, but they also tend to be very accessible, very available. The meetings probably happen within 20 minutes of your house, right? So you can drive over, show up, engage, and stay involved.
That's great input. Thank you so much for your time today. and for sharing your experience with us, with our listeners. And thank you for your service.
Thank you for all you're doing.